Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session on operator training simulators, immersive training simulators, augmented reality, and gaming. And with us today, we have a couple of expert panelists and a speaker. In addition to, I'm going to make a presentation on OTS and immersive training simulators and what we're seeing as far as trends from ARC. And my name is Janice Abel, and I'm the lead analyst. Can you hear me back there, everybody? Yeah, good. Too loud? No, okay. From ARC on OTS, and we have a study, and we also have a supplier selection guide for operator training simulators. And so we have had a lot of interest over the last few years, and you know, as you can imagine, it's being driven by a number of factors. A lot of it's around knowledge transfer, and we can talk a lot about that as we go through this presentation. So I'm going to go through it, you know, and if there's some area that you want to focus on afterwards, we can talk about it. And also, anybody that came to this session, at the end, I need to get a piece of paper because I will pass something around. I have a survey that I did on operator training simulators, and I'm going to give everybody, I was trying to entice you to come to this session rather than the other session, so that I'm going to give you all a copy of the survey. I'll email it to you in a PDF. So you just need to get your name and your email address. So again, the session's name is Operator Training Simulators, Immersive Training Simulators, Augmented Reality, and Gaming. I'm going to talk about what we're seeing, what people are talking about, and what they're doing. So I'm going to talk about what's driving usage, some of the visualization, emerging technologies that are driving usage for OTS, and also some of the, some other areas that are driving OTS. I'll also talk about a recent survey that we did, and also some of the results from that survey, more around emerging trends and things. And then we'll have a speaker, Dr. Richard Turton, who's from West Virginia University, and then we'll have Joe McMullen, who's from Schneider Electric, join us on the panel. So hopefully we'll have some good questions. So as you're going through, write them down, think about maybe something that you might want to ask, because they have a lot of experience in this area. So what's driving OTS? Well, there's a number of factors that are driving OTS. Everything from this tech-savvy new worker generation, the retiring workforce, to globalization, emerging cultures where they have situations where the job market's so good they can hop jobs every 2 years, so they need to find another operator or another trained employee that can fit the bill, and it's not that easy. Other things that are driving are emerging technologies, which we've been seeing a lot about today, and the other thing is driving it is motivation and confidence to do the job. And I think all of those things are really strong drivers, and that's what we're hearing from people. That's some of the reasons that they implement OTS. So the new tech-savvy worker, well, yeah, that's definitely a driver. There's a lot of people leaving. What's walking out the door is lots and lots of expertise that's in their head that took them years to develop. These are people that really started on the control system and kind of really almost developed some of the technology, and as it got more sophisticated, they were part of that. So that's what you're losing when you see these people walking out the door. And so what are you going to do? You have all these young people, or actually these tech-savvy new workforce coming in, and the millennials, that's what they call them, tech-savvy millennials, I was told. And these tech-savvy millennials, they want more sophisticated technologies and things like that. So they want to use some of this technology in order to do their jobs quickly, and in a sense, the way that they've kind of, they're like digital natives, as somebody called them. So what do you do? How do you replace some of the technology? And what other drivers are driving the transforming training simulators? Well, a lot of them are around the Internet of Things. There's lots of sensors and information that's coming into all of the systems and stuff, and you really just can't fathom all of this information all at once. So it's really, really hard to get to that point where these experts are. The visualization is really important, I think, because in the training process it helps them to understand what they're learning on this situations. We saw last year some platforms where people were learning what the platform was going to be before they even went out to the platform or onto the ship, so that they could understand where all the safety valves were, what they were going to control. And when they said they noticed a huge difference when these people had never even been on this ship, they knew exactly what they were doing, they knew where to go, and it was a much smoother transition than they'd had in the past, because just learning on a screen as opposed to having that immersive technology, that they actually felt like they'd been on the ship before. So it's a really good experience. They retain more of it. So, it's really, I think that operator training simulators, immersive training simulators are the way to go for people if they're looking to train people in a much faster manner than just reading a book or in a classroom, or even e-learning is maybe a little better, but I think that this is probably the way that even a lot of schools and eventually will all be using more types of technologies. So also plant models and having real time and having automated functionality, all of that is helping to drive more immersive training simulators. Oops. Okay. So some of the other reasons that we're seeing for implementing training simulators is the knowledge transfer. People have all this information that, you just can't replace people that have so much information. They know what's going to happen if they do something like that. You can't, like someone said last year, you can't just give someone the keys to the kingdom because they have a degree or that they've just been out of school. They don't feel like they don't even have the confidence that they could deal with some kind of an emergency. Startups and shutdowns in some plants, they're actually occurring less often than ever, like once every 5 years. And I've talked to some people that retired, and they were called back into the plant to restart up the plant and shut it down for them because they didn't know how to do it. So if you can imagine that, in that case, they don't do it often. But in other cases, in some energy plants, they're actually shutting them down quite often because they're saving energy. So I'm seeing both challenges. So that's challenging either way. But you can get into situations where the plant could go into, the plant equipment could malfunction if you don't do it correctly. So it can be actually very cost effective to have people trained on a training simulator and know exactly what they're supposed to do. So capital expenses and expansions are really important today. And the other thing is it does increase learning. It makes it faster and the retention's better. So the knowledge, the other reason that the companies were saying, and a couple of years ago we had a speaker from Salt River Project, and he talked about how within the next 5 years, he said, and this was a couple of years ago, he said 100% of their workforce was eligible for retirement. So what they were doing is they were ramping it up, and they were training a lot of the young people. And he was a terrific speaker, and he said it is making a difference. And now Air Products said that they just can't find enough skilled workers that have the knowledge. And then I saw an article in Industry Week, and then they said that the specter of knowledge that's walking out the door with the retirees is a problem for them because they perceive it as a lack of interest. They've seen a lack of interest from young people to go into manufacturing. And I think that this will be addressed in one of the presentations a little later, how the universities are addressing that. And I have a personal thing, because my daughter went to engineering school, so I wanted my daughter to go to engineering school, and because I think it does open the door to a lot of opportunities. So I made her apply to, I wanted her to apply to my school, which was Worcester Polytech, but she applied to RPI, and she did get in, and because I knew she would. And so we went to Accepted Students Day, and she loved the Gothic architecture of the buildings because she's like a Harry Potter-ish type thing. That's what it looks like. And she said the only other thing she liked was all the boys, because there was a lot more boys in the other universities, at the liberal arts schools. And she didn't, but I have to tell you that she didn't go. I said, well, that's not a very good reason to go. So anyway, I'll just tell you that. So my personal feeling is I couldn't influence my daughter into going that route. So and I think part of it is, they don't really understand. They don't know that It's a very good career, and it has a good career path, and I think the technology is changing to a point where it's actually quite an interesting career, and I think it's even going to get better. So other reasons for implementing training, of course, are disasters, abnormal situations, managing those, fire scenarios, and these are actually some examples from training simulators. And the ability to respond, this was a kind of a cool one. The man down, they actually have avatars in some of them, and I'll show you as we go through. And, you know, even to avoid some disaster consequences. So, other reasons that people gave that they're implementing training simulators are regulatory concerns. And then probably a real top reason is liability and safety, which is the avoidance of disasters, being able to deal with a disaster if it does happen, and having a plan for that. And also the fines, that regulations that they get for when something does happen. So we had done a survey at ARC, and one of the things we asked people was, in terms of developing the future workforce leaders, what were some of the is it challenging to acquire new talent? And 84% said it was. That they are having that issue to acquire the types of talent that they need to fill these positions. So that's another big driver. And so some of the technologies that we're seeing that people are actually using these plants, they go from low fidelity, you know, some types of generic systems that maybe don't emulate the plant quite the same way, or they're on a unit operation that is pretty standardized in most plants. It might not be quite the same plant, but they are using them still, and they're a little less expensive, but they're probably used more in other types of industry, maybe like non-hazardous industries. The high fidelity are typically, you see them more in the power industries, and you see them in the more oil and gas industries and petrochemical industries. That's where you'd see a lot of the, and these are systems that actually their models are really based almost precisely on the plant, if not exactly on the plant. And if they're not close to the plant, the other issue you get is the operators don't like them. They say, that's a piece of junk. It doesn't work. And sometimes, often cases, it gets mothballed. And that often happens as well when people get the plant up and running, everybody's trained, and boom, now after the new plant expansion or the new capital construction, they're not using it because either it's too hard to update the models, or they don't have a service that updates them, or they just fall into disuse. So some of the types of technologies that we're seeing include the 2D, 3D graphics, the immersive graphics, and the virtual reality, where you feel like you're almost like surrounded by this, you know, and you feel like you're actually in the middle of it. And then augmented reality, we actually have screens that pop up and and it can be a combination of them, where some people are using that depending on the type of operator or type of worker they're training. So some of the examples of operator training simulators, and these are just what they would look like if you saw them, different types that you might see from different control rooms and different vendors, different suppliers. And they do vary quite a bit. It depends on the company, it depends on the culture, it depends on the situation. So some of the immersive training simulators, we're seeing quite a few. We're seeing all different types, and it is quite interesting what they're doing with this. And somebody said, well, the new millennial workforce does really like them, but also experienced workers like them. It gives them a different perspective on the situation, and it's also good for retraining as well, especially when there's something new or something changes in the plant. So I think they all have their place, and they're all great for training workers, and I think they work really well. So we did a survey, and we asked people about what in the future would they like to see in operator training simulators in terms of software development. And these are a lot of people that have, you know, traditional types, the 2D type screens that they're looking at. And the number one answer was 3D and virtual and immersive. So they definitely want to do that. And one of the things that people were saying was, well, the cost is too prohibitive, but what we're hearing from the suppliers is that the cost is coming down substantially, that you can implement in a more immersive type 3D operated training simulator for almost the same cost as a traditional operated training simulator. So just an example, you see the 2D types of visualization, the 3D, the immersive. These are some more immersive types, just so you know what I'm talking about, just because it's easier to just to see them. Some immersive with augmented reality. And so all different types of visualization work. Again, it depends on the culture. We're seeing some simpler, in some cases easy to understand. We're also seeing some more complex graphics, and even like it looks just like the plant. So when you went out into the plant, you'd know exactly what that looked like. And we're also seeing like much more complex. We're actually like it vibrates and it has a lot, smells and things that are a lot more almost like you're actually out in the plant operating the system. So we're seeing all types of displays. They all work and they all have value. And so I don't know what other people are seeing. So if you're seeing the more simpler, some people think that's better because you can see an alarm real quickly, and it depends upon what you're doing and the culture and the philosophy. So we also asked about immersive in this chart. We did the survey and we asked about, so what are you seeing for emerging technologies? What would you? 25% said they like to see immersive. So, and I think if we did it again today, that was a little over a year ago, we'd see even more. And it does have a lot of value, as I said, that people are seeing that immersive does help them get that visualization. They retain the knowledge a lot stronger than they did previously. So, and this is if the immersive is high fidelity and it does emulate the plant pretty precisely, because that's real important. And the models can take time to build, and hopefully they'll be getting easier in the future as things, tools and things get easier. So there's just some examples of some interactive and 3D displays, and these are from some companies that are working on different types of displays and things that are for simulators that are in the immersive and interactive displays. The other area that people mentioned that they'd like to see, it's the top area, was in gaming. So we are seeing some industrial gaming. Some of it, I think, they were thinking about gaming one operator against another. And someone pointed out to me that you can do that, but the problem is that all it does is make them faster. They do it really quick. And in fact, one person was saying that they have an operator training simulator, and they didn't like it, so they speeded up the speed because it wasn't fast enough for them. And so they had to speed it back down to what the real plant was doing. So it can have some consequences, I guess. And so you really have to look at the situation and the picture of what you're doing. So one of the other things is I remember when I was young, when I was younger, let's put it that way, and the average age of engineers kind of went along with me, but we played these games, Pong. I don't know if anybody remembers Pong. We played Donkey Kong. We played Space Invaders, Pac-Man. I was the Pac-Man champ at the local bar because you got a free dinner when I was in grad school on Friday nights. So that was kind of fun. So I don't know if anybody here recognizes these games, but that was what you'd see in a gaming environment, okay? And so you go into a plant, and this is the kind of graphic you might see. So it looked kind of, similar. It was interesting, and, you look at it. So then you go today and you look at what the tech-savvy millennial generation's been playing. I mean, these are the kind of games, they're very vivid, and you compare that to the graphics. So I say to the suppliers, you got to address this because, I mean, these are fast-moving, shoot-'em-up type, really games, and, I mean, they're very lifelike, and they can make their own avatar, I was told, and put their own person in and use the person and drive it around, and I'm hearing that they are doing avatars in some of these simulators, and we'll hear a little bit about that later. So anyway, so that's what they have to look at even today. So that's what a lot of people are seeing in a plant. So, and this is what I expect to see in the future, more using more like the gaming, more fast-moving type. And, you know, I think this will even eventually get into the control area as well. You know, some people said no, but they also said no when we talked about mobility and the cloud and all these other transforming technologies. So I do think that we're going to see more of this. So we also asked about the online modeling. The second feature was online modeling and real-time integration with DCS. That was a popular answer. That was actually a challenge for people, is being able to model their processes and be able to integrate it with the data. So that is something that, I don't know. Okay, that is something that I think that we're starting to see some of that, but I think that we need to see more of it, you know, where your plant is updated with the information that you have. And so one of the things we have seen is we've seen some plants where they were actually implementing plants where they're actually doing some like tight integration where they can do predictive control and they can actually translate that right into the operator training simulator so that they can update their plant online and offline and integrate it. So we're starting to see that, and I know we're going to see more of it. And the other feature that people mentioned a lot was the linking the console with the field operator. And I thought that was really important because what we're seeing is there's some people actually are starting as field operators, and then the console is much nicer, so that's where they come inside, I was told. And so they really need to be trained for both the field and the operator console. So there needs to be some kind of linking with the operator training simulators. So the last thing I wanted to mention is some of the other things that we're seeing as far as future development, like the 3D and the virtual. People are looking for easy to develop scenarios and models, because you have to have these scenarios that actually, when the trainer makes a change, the operator needs to respond to that change. And that's particularly important with operator training simulators. Also, ease of use and having the automated updates. Those are things people really want to see in the future. Linking to the models, as I mentioned before, having modern technologies, maybe even using some of these, like the watches and other immersive technologies. I know a lot of people are using Oculus. And being more mobile, having the smells, like you could smell a fire, you could smell a nauseous chemical. And also, some people are even talking about texture and some other things. So it's getting quite interesting. We've seen some examples where, in other areas where the technology is getting there, because they're actually taking, in the medical field, they're taking scans, like CAT scans of your heart, and they actually making a mobile beating heart where you can actually take that, and now they have a simulating the heart beating, and the doctor can actually figure out before an operation, because everybody's heart's a little different in the way it is, they can figure out exactly how they're going to do the operation, even practice on the patient, and then they can take that information and they can use it to show the patient what they're going to do. And it's much easier to explain than just, showing them like a simple diagram in an office. So some of the benefits that we're seeing from operator training simulators, and a lot of these are from the study that we did, include the productivity improvements. People are seeing immense productivity improvements with the employees. They see like confidence and motivation among the young people. They're seeing a lot of quality improvements. So it's a lot of benefits for training, and even all employees, as I said. They're seeing the fact that they have increased availability, the ability to have reduced liability, and get the people trained really easily and have worker confidence. And the 6 to 7, it was from a study, and they said that's what it takes for them. This from I think it was Schlumberger study that they had done. They said it takes them 6 to 7 years to train a new employee to get them up to the level of somebody who's a very experienced employee. And the problem is that they don't have the time to do that today. And what I was told is with the operator training simulators, we can talk about this later, that they have the ability to reduce that time to 6 to 9 months. So that's the equivalent. So that's pretty impressive when you think about that. And it's also pretty scary with everybody, that grown up with all this technology walking out the door. So some of the strategies that people have told me that they're doing in terms of operator training and ITS, they want to link them together to improve user experience, so that maybe you have both types of screens initially, and maybe eventually you do one or the other, or what works best in your plant. And start to use immersive training. I think it can be powerful if you're not started using that. Use the modeling tools. You need to have them. They have to be easy to implement and maintain. That's a big plus. And integrate OTS and ITS into the process, I think. And then the last one, which I think is super important, is train all types of workers, not just operators. And some plants are already doing this. They're training plant managers, they're training engineers, they're training maintenance people, and they're actually taking it into the level of even some of the corporate people are getting trained. And some companies and suppliers are addressing this by having specific solutions for different types of workers. So my message is, and I'd like to end with this note, is it should be training simulators for all types of workers, so that everybody understands. So if there's a situation that maybe they can't get the information, or they can't, or it's an emergency situation, that everyone has that background, they know what they're dealing with. So with that, I'd like to close, and I'd like to thank everybody again for coming.